Okay, everybody at Chainlink, this is Balaji here, and I want to talk to you about something today which is called technodemocracy. I think there's a lot of stuff here which is relevant to people building oracles or doing bidirectional things, anything really complex on chain. So I'm going to give a talk, and then I think the extension to oracles will be perhaps fairly straightforward. So technodemocracy, the concept is from magical internet money to magical internet votes. And this is an example of my friend Brian Johnson in a hypothetical technodemocratic party where somebody who votes for him gets an NFT, an I voted NFT, and he's the president, and there's a vice president, and there's other people with this party. So just give some motivation. I'll talk about technodemocracy from a motivation standpoint, then give some visualizations and talk about how we might execute it. So just as motivation, what comes after cryptocurrency? So if the financial crisis of 2008 motivated cryptocurrency, I think the political crisis of 2024 motivates technodemocracy. Democratically elected leaders are now very democratically unpopular. This is a global phenomenon. And you can see a zillion studies on this. I won't recapitulate this. This is just something which we know is happening. So what comes next? Well, if the financial crisis of 2008 and end the Fed led to Bitcoin, the political crisis of 2024, I think, may lead to technodemocracy, right? And let me just jump right into a concrete example. Okay, so I'll give you some visualizations. So suppose that, my friend, my colleague, Brian Johnson, he founded the Don't Die Party. Okay, let's use that to visualize a sample implementation of technodemocracy. So here's an example of Brian Johnson's Don't Die Party. It's built on a client to the Farcaster protocol. It looks a lot like Twitter. But what if you drill in a bit and say, okay, what happens if I click this apply button? Well, first you'll see before you click it that the members are ideologically distinct from civilization at large. They're more capitalist, more libertarian, more pro-longevity. And when you click this apply button and you try to join, what happens? Well, first there's an interface which has you follow Brian, but also the other people in his platform, okay? Next, you fund them. This alone distinguishes it from the Democrat or Republican parties, because party membership is not just based on casual self-ID. It requires capital and time commitment, okay? So you're donating money. And third, and most important, and this is the key bit of technodemocracy, is why it's not just a petition or a crowdfunding, is the franchise, okay? So this means a Google OAuth style interface where you explicitly consent to give party members some degree of admin access to your digital account in return for mutual benefit. So in this case, vote for them as president, VP, and treasurer of Don't Die, so you get an on-chain NFT. Commit to follow norms and pay annual dues, so there's a debit from your wallet. And even allow, in this case, party leaders to slash 100 in staked funds, and generally name the president to be dispute resolver on all matters of governance within the party's digital and physical properties. So much like joining a company and giving up some control to the CEO, you're joining a party and giving up some control to the president. And both Ethereum and Solana have tools for this now. And the thing is, you actually already do this if you use, for example, MetaMask or OAuth. You're giving a limited yet binding grant of permissions over your wallet to a digital party. So you do this all the time. For example, with MetaMask, connect to this account and you can see the address, account balance, its activity, suggest transactions approved. You're giving some partial control over your digital wallet. Same with OAuth. When you log into an app, this, in this case, Google is managing, that app's access to your profile info and email address. And the key concept is that you're not granting this permission to a third-party program, but a third political party. It's a binding grant of digital power. And just like, this is, and of course you can revoke auth access, but for so long as you've done it, you've given that third party the ability to administer at least some of your account, okay? And so that's what makes technodemocracy like an on-chain vote with some consequence. It's not simply a informal vote. It actually starts to form the state on-chain by a binding grant of digital power. Because in many ways, what is the state offline? It is essentially the combination of the access to everybody's bank accounts in a sense, right? Taxation is a big part of the state. So this is a piece of that. So the key innovation is in delegating permission, as I said, not to a third-party app, but to a new digital party. And one of the consequences, one of the things you get is you get an I voted receipt after you technodemocratically vote. You say you voted for them as president, VP, and treasurer. Okay. And you can view this on either scan. And so it's a cryptographically verifiable vote. You can prove you joined. You can see who others joined. Any third party can verify these are real people rather than bots, right? And you then attend party events, longevity policy, group workout, blueprint party dinner, and you're expected to do things that advance the cause, okay? Now let's discuss some key concepts behind technodemocracy now that we've seen it at a high level. Why should we expect it now? Well, all transactions and communications are online, so all legislation elections should be as well. And institutional voting, we already know it has three parts. There's like the Twitter election, there's the fundraising election, and then there's the offline fiat election. And it's only really this part that hasn't been put completely online, and that's what technodemocracy does. We also know that internet voting has three parts too, because, for example, something like Reddit, that's like upvoting on social media. Every social media site has this. ENS, other DAOs on snapshot.org, there's votes for the allocation of crypto treasuries. And then Estonia, for example, actually has fully online voting, right? So one question is, in what sense is digital voting binding? Why isn't it like a LARP, live action role play? Well, basically right now you use, like NFTs, for example, for your Discord. You use NFT membership to govern who has governance over your DAO. So it controls Discords and DAOs right now. But your crypto wallet can also control the access to a door. So in this case, your home can be unlocked with Ethereum by verifying an NFT membership, right? And once you start seeing this, that actually crypto secures not just the digital, but the physical, well, it's not just the access to your door, it's the access to the door of your car. And if it's not just the access to your car, but of your plane or your train or your bus or really any piece of capital equipment, and eventually to your drones and to your robots and so on and so forth. So that's a progression from Discords, which is just, communication, to DAOs, which is transaction, to doors, which are static objects, to drones, which are moving objects. You can actually see the scope of what a crypto wallet controls will just keep going up with time, right? And so if you have a technodemocratic president who has the pledge of partial control over thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of crypto wallets, that means the technodemocratic vote controls significant resources and is not just ceremonial, okay? So that means crypto wallets can control real resources in the physical world. And in fact, of course they will, because every Web 2 piece of software gets hacked, but Web 3 doesn't. So in the fullness of time, anything that you really care about will be protected with on-chain security. So let me go through some key features of technodemocracy as to why we'd want it. So I mentioned a cryptographically verifiable vote. That's actually really important. I mentioned a streaming vote. When someone joins a party, the vote and membership is registered on-chain immediately. This is more like Twitter and better than the mess we have where the election day is. I mentioned the social smart, or another concept here is the social smart contract, right? So basically the permissions, this is like a binding campaign promise. A technodemocratic leader makes a commitment, and so does the voter. And so both parties are bound in a way that both parties have to take responsibility. You have provably limited government, where this is slashing $100 in this case in stake funds, but not 1,000 or 10,000. So the level of control that a technodemocratically formed government has over your crypto wallet is limited. Truly universal franchise, because anybody can now vote for anybody. And truly universal candidacy, because only 2% of the world satisfies the conditions to run for president of the United States, but 100% of the world can now run for president of a technodemocratic party or network state. Okay, so anybody can just, on the internet, they can just run. Truly new polities, because basically these 13,439 people have essentially formed a polity and elected a leader, so they don't need to be bound by geography anymore. Digital delegation, so you never have to ask who's in charge. A technodemocratic president can name a cabinet and grant them cryptographically limited powers. 100% democracy, because every single person who's part of the community has actually voted for the president of that community. And 0.1% democracy, because even 0.1% of the world is 800,000 people, which is plenty. So even a tiny minority of 13,439 people can form a new technodemocratic party. So finally, a few more examples of what technodemocracy enables. So, for example, the Mars Party. This would be something where maybe people would join Elon, do everything they possibly can to make Mars a reality. Elon would be the obvious leader, right? Another example, Daniel Ek or his, parallel universe version, Donnie Ek, could form an open source AI party. And, the overall concept here is that technodemocracy takes us from the two-party to the N-party system. It could reopen political innovation. And I should note, by the way, it's a whole separate thing to have these parties contest what I'd call fiat elections. Assume they all start as purely online and only add fiat later. They're just talking about pledge control over crypto wallets. You're not talking about any fiat or offline elections for a while. Just like, with Bitcoin, it started as like a few dollars before it, rose up in value. You're doing the equivalent of an election for dog catcher. It's not going to be a big thing, okay? So one last remark, in 2016, one candidate won 65 million votes, the other won 62 million. So if a president of a technodemocratic, of a network state gets more than 70 million technodemocratic votes, they have more provable democratic legitimacy than the legacy system, because these would all be on-chain votes, right? So that's a really interesting concept for the future, which is, of course, you don't need 70 million votes. If you even had 1 million on-chain votes or 100,000 on-chain votes, you'd be more provably legitimate than many leaders, okay? So that's what I'd call the technodemocratic flippening, and it sets the bar. Just like there's a certain bar for the size of a cryptocurrency for it to be bigger than the Turkish lira or the Chilean peso, this is the bar for the number of technodemocratic votes you need to become as democratically legitimate as a president of a fiat state as opposed to a network state. We can now win the market for votes. So just in terms of execution, there's much I can say on this. There's a lot of pieces of this, obviously, that could relate to oracles. In particular, everything you're doing where there's some real world asset that's on the other side of this, that actually makes the crypto wallet, able to control more real resources and see more real resources. So a lot of that would be something that, like folks who are working with Chainlink might be able to help with.